How we doing today? My name's Antonio. For those of you who've been following along, I have been recapping my experience with doing psychedelic therapy. For those of you who have not seen the other videos that talked about my previous 3 journeys, I would suggest you go do so. They're on our they're on YouTube. Live Loud Life is our Live Loud Chiropractic, Live Loud Life podcast. It's also seen on podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, all those types of places. But hopefully in you finding this video, you have a curiosity about discovering some tools for things that might help you with either stress, anxiety, or just some other things going on in your life. And I honestly never thought I was a person that had anxiety, because my definition of what I thought anxiety was this like crippling, debilitating thing. Like I can't move, I can't do anything, which I really empathize for those people that have that, because it does sound very challenging. Where mine was like this low level burn that was just slowly, honestly, it sounds a little extreme, but slowly killing me. What I mean by that is my blood panels were off. Like I had low testosterone, cortisol levels were high, stress hormone. Previously I had broken out in stress hives all over my body. I attributed to, well, it's not, I still have some hair, but hair loss. And part of that might just be age, who knows. But I was not setting myself up for success. And what's interesting, and I've heard, and I don't know if there's an original quote to this, but they talk about this American or Western lifestyle and culture, which is beautiful because we live in this amazing country that allows us to go out and do great things, and to make a lot of money, and to be great, and to build these businesses. And that is something that I've always wanted. I don't come from a family that has business experience. I've never took business classes in college or anything like that. I'm trying to study from courses and things like that. But that to me, I feel is my biggest limitation, is I want to be further along in my knowledge of business and understanding. But then yet understanding and hearing people, like, it's always hard. It's always going to be a grind, no matter where you are in the journey. And it's what you learn from all of that, which is ultimately really helpful. And that's what I lost sight of. And my expectations and reality, my expectations did not meet my reality. And that by definition is what anxiety is. And someone else had, kind of reframed it. And that's also like what suffering is. And that's ultimately what I was going through. And I needed a hard reset. Like, I've done talk therapy before, not that it was bad. The talk therapist was actually a really good therapist that says, like, I don't think I can help you. Sounds like you need a business coach. Your stress comes more along from the business, so you need someone to help you deal with that, to help the stress from that. And it's all been helpful. I just always put these realistically unrealistic expectations of what I was actually able to do, which then just left me frozen and stuck. I wanted to do all these things, but I was doing too many things, which ultimately led to no action. And that's where I am now. I'm constantly, I'm in a phase of prioritization, restructuring, and focus, so that I don't go back to that same spot. But like many of us, we have this FOMO, fear of missing out, of, oh, well, there's an opportunity. Or could it be real estate? Could it be online work? Could it be more just the brick and mortar of the business? Whatever that is for you, could be pursuing different relationships, right? Is this constant battle of more or different in all this. And I want people to have more. I want people to live this expansive life of getting those things, but it is a prioritization if you don't have teams and support and all that other stuff. We can only do so many things, and that's where I have struggled so much. And maybe for you, and it comes true with being a father and a parent. I was chatting with someone else who's a mom, and we've had these conversations about just how differently dads and moms feel about certain things, where, my wife, Nichelle, has, feels a certain way about the providing of the kids from a more nurturing and growth standpoint, where I obviously think about that, but then I'm thinking about, structure and growth of our family from a financial thing, and being financially responsible for them, and helping with food on the table, and providing and experience and all those things. And it just got to me. And there's obviously ways for people to work on this on their own, but I was at this break point, and Nichelle graciously reached out to a friend of ours who does this, and I was, let's go, let's do it. And I've had great experiences. I've had really great experiences. But without everything else, these great experiences are in correlation into the therapy process itself. It's not just you just do mushrooms or altered states of consciousness and then you kind of figure it out on your own. It is best set up with the environment, downloading and understanding and integrating it with someone who knows what they're doing to help make these ultimate changes in your life. And so to recap for this other ones, because when you hear these stories of what my journeys is, you're like, dude, it just sounds like you're tripping. Like, what does that have to do with life, right? And it's open to interpretation, right? For, if I was to have a conversation with Ashley who helped me versus a conversation with someone else, you're going to get different perspective. And that's good and that's okay. And that's what I think is also interesting is like, kind of like, what does it mean to you? Because ultimately we all have different biases of what we've learned through our life before this point. Also different biases and expectations as to what things could mean moving forward based on, parents or friends or whatever that is, right? And so I'm going to recap what it is and kind of like, this one still is a little bit more out there as far as like some of the integration piece, but ultimately, excuse me, what I'm coming down to is, which is interesting because previously I had been judging myself by not doing enough. But I think it's just a part of me where I have to do. I think some people are okay with just like, I need to relax and rest and do those things, which is important. Work harder, rest harder. That's something I'm also working on so that I can work harder. But that comes to prioritization, right? Not being as scattered with this and feeling like then I need to make up. Working harder is not the answer. It's a prioritization. And that's literally where I am right now. But it still comes with action. And I have taken more or less the last 3, 4-ish, 5 months of not doing as much action because I've been trying to do more of a reset rest mode. And I feel good about taking more action because ultimately I am extremely grateful and I'm practicing this focus of gratitude for the opportunity that I've been given. And I want to make sure that I don't want to say take advantage of, but fulfill to the best of my ability what I'm actually capable of doing. And I don't think I have been doing that. I think I've been leaving on the table, and that's a work harder, rest harder type of mentality that I'm trying to practice and implement. But ultimately, the part of this change too is I'm feeling like my old self has died, my old ways and my old thoughts. Old habits die hard, as they say. And it's easier said than done. Like when you're in the medicine and you're doing this stuff, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I need to do this. But then as you come back into this reality, right, and feeling that, it's hard to implement some of that stuff sometimes as far as breathing and meditation or gratitude or mindfulness or being present, whatever that is for you, right? In the grand scheme of all that, of everything going on, it can be very challenging to do that. And that is the work, the constant battle, but also think prioritization, right? Of also setting yourself up for success is like prioritization of not feeling left out is like getting off of social media and looking to see whatever else is doing, or, the conversations in the path of one person, while it might be something you're interested in, might not be the right thing right now. And that's a big part of the puzzle. But here's a quick recap. I'm going to boil it down because it was a crazy experience. And this is, again, good for me, for my recollection of what happened on that day and everything else, but also hopefully it brings not obviously just the journey itself, because everyone's journey is going to be different, but that kind of integrated piece. But ultimately, we did what we called what's called a hero's journey at 5 grams. Traditionally, I cannot remember, I was taking anywhere between 3 to 3.5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms. And then in previous journeys, I had a booster 2 hours or so afterwards. So as the psilocybin was kind of coming down, then it kind of ramps back up. And this time we just went with a heartier dose with an option to do that, but I opted not to. And in hindsight, I think it would have been helpful too. And I'll talk a little bit about just my experience with completion in these journeys. But it was a wild ride. And I think so much of the stigma around this too is just people are just like, well, how is this therapy? You're just out there tripping on psychedelics. Like how is that even helpful? I don't know. I don't completely know the answer, to be honest. But it does create this altered state of consciousness in which things come to you, and it's the interpretation of what comes to you and that knowledge, whatever you want to call it, information, visuals, things that happen that play into either what you're dealing with, something that happened in the past, something you're struggling with now, anxiety you have about the future, and what might be some options of what you need to do. And ultimately, it started off, I was coming in with the intention of just growth, expansion. I'm open to see whatever happens, really without any sort of expectation. And I was on a carnival ride, a roller coaster, not really like a lot of strong visuals as far as colors and stuff, but it definitely felt like I was just going on this roller coaster. And if you know carnivals, they have like those shooting the balloon games or other things where you win prizes in these booths, right? And ultimately, I was on this wall in this roller coaster, and like with the pellet gun or something, I was shot. Like I was this toy that was shot on the wall, and it wasn't bad though. I tell this story, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. But it was as I was shot, it was like a game, almost like a video game where I was spinning, and then and then I was dying, but it was my old self dying. It was the old me taking these last breaths, and they were extremely exhausting breaths. It was like this, and they were just drawn out, and it felt like it was going on for an eternity. And I had even said, I'm like, it's all good. My old self is dying. It's all good. But it was just a slow death. And what was interesting, after I laid there and I died, I was like, well, I have the choice. I was like, I can restart the game. And so the game restarted and went back on the roller coaster and was just kind of rolling around. And then ultimately it happened again. I got shot, and I just took these breaths, and the old self of me died again. And, again, when different people hear this story, you can hear a different interpretation. But ultimately, one thing that's true, in order for you to be a different person, your old ways have to die. The old you, your old programs, your old habits, all of these things have to be put to rest in order for you to grow into somebody new. So that was extremely, I think most people would hear that, we're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But until you have a feeling associated with that, it's hard to sometimes come to grips with that, because our old self is so ingrained in who we are that it is extremely hard to let go. And sometimes not by choice. Maybe sounds weird, but maybe by you being shot in a game, completely metaphorically, it almost created like this force nature of like, yeah, like just die. Like, I want this part of me to be done so that I can grow into this new person. And, in hindsight, listen, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Of course I want that, right? But I don't know why I wasn't letting go of that before. Maybe this is what finally did that. And I do feel like I've made leaps and bound jumps of how I feel and how I operate and how I think since starting this last August only about 6 months ago. And so I when I say come to, it's like I have eye masks on and headphones on, and after that I was kind of just spinning, and it seemed like the game was done. It was almost like game over. And so I kind of came up, and I'm like, wow, I feel very accomplished. I feel very good about this. This was very informative. It was transcendent, if you will. And the crazy part of this was on February 2nd, and on this year, this was Groundhog's Day. And I came up, and I'm sitting on her couch, and she's there, observing and taking notes. And I was like, holy shit, this is like a deja vu moment. I've been here before. The last journeys because I've done it in in her office in her basement before, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been here before. And you were in the same spot, and I came up. I'm like, wow, this was a great experience. And it was like all this had happened before, and it was Groundhog's Day. And I definitely went into this spell of hysterical laughter because it was Groundhog's Day, and I felt like I've been living the same life or the same day over and over again. and I was laughing hysterically for quite some time. And it was good in the sense of getting that out. I haven't laughed like that in a while. And it was reminders like we all need to laugh a little bit more. I feel like I'm sometimes this old dude who's just like, oh, just all business, get shit done. And it was good because I lost some of the enjoyment in life. And that was a choice. Like there's so many great things in my life going on. And being this sour dude is not helpful for anybody. It's not helpful for myself. It's not helpful for my kids or my family. And so it felt good to laugh, and it was a reminder to laugh more. And I will admit, because it was a psychedelic, and what would most people be like, this dude is just straight tripping right now. But it felt good to laugh for a while. But the medicine comes in waves, and then I had some thoughts. I was like, fuck, Groundhog's Day is kind of dark. I apologize. I was trying to keep this PC and not say those things. And then I had this realization. It was just like, man, Groundhog's Day that kind of sucks, right? I don't want to live that same day over and over. I don't want to be in this position of being anxious and have these, all this worry and all this stuff going back and forth, which is clearly by choice. And live that over and over. And I do feel there's times of feeling like life, the mundane of life, of like, it's just like the same thing over and over. But that's not how it has to be. We have a choice to find the beauty in all these small things and the laughter in all these small things, rather than being like, it's got to be this way and I got to do this and it's this and this. That's kind of how Groundhog's Day was. And he was able to, in the movie with Bill Murray of, I don't want to say take advantage, but like utilize it in his favor, and then realize like that's not what you want. You want, even though you're living the same diet, what feels like it, you have a choice to pull out from this and see the novelty of every day, because every day is not the same. And so again, like a good kind of experience of feeling and talking about those things of like, I have a choice here. I have a choice to start my life over again, or this new day over again. And every day is a new day and a new opportunity where I could see the differences on the mundane, right? Like, oh, I'm driving the exact same path, but maybe being a little bit more observant of like, oh my gosh, I've never noticed this house over here before, that farm or that tree, and those types of things of just being more observant rather than tunneled of like, it's the same day and I'm only looking at the same things, over and over again. So again, really good. And kind of was laughing some more and letting things go. And as this next wave came on, I had this spiritual experience. It was which I'm going to call it. I was in space. I was in time. I was in this space. There was no time. There was no space. I felt kind of like it was time traveling, but it wasn't into any particular space. But there was a central energy, if you want to call it, a central light, and it was, if the only best way I can describe it is God, is creator, is everything, right? And that is one of the things that they talk about with psychedelic medicine, is that those who have a spiritual experience, an enlightened experience, it really just, it changes things. And this is why it also, I think people are uneasy about doing this, is because there is so much unknown. And as humans, we want to know, where did we come from? What's our purpose, right? And those are good questions you ask. And what I came to is, it's good to be curious about that. But I'm trying to figure out how I phrase this before I apologize. But when we don't know, and when we want that knowledge, that's where it gets to be harder. And this is for me, maybe not for others, as I want to know. Knowledge, we won't fully ever know. I can be curious, I can ask questions about certain things, but I won't ever fully know, right? And that's part of it, is this creator, this all central being, God, and there's elements of it we see with different religions and whatnot, and that's where I'm still learning more about all of this, right? Is I felt connected to it like I've never been connected before. I was God. God was me. God was everything, right? And this whole thing about how we talk about how we're all created, like obviously we have so much friction and turmoil between humans, but like ultimately we all kind of came from the same place, right? Whether you want to call it the Big Bang, right? Something happened to create everything, which again, we all came from it. Whether it is whether it is Genesis through the Bible of where we came from, right? But ultimately, I think most people would understand, just as a human race and just humans in general, we are connected. And that's what I felt. But at a certain point, it was too much. It was too much power. And I was like, this is heavy. As a human, me as a human, maybe there are others who feel differently. This is not something we're meant to be able to withhold and withstand because of that sheer power. And for a moment there, it felt like I was losing grasp of, who I was in this reality. And that's part of doing the hero dose. There's a lot of ego dissolution of removing yourself from who you are. And that's part of the benefit of it. And so ultimately, it was good, although it ended up in this space of like a lot of too much power. And for some of that, it could be maybe there's some things about me losing people within my life and having questions about life after death, because then we started talking about like, well, do we live a life after death? Have we lived lives before? What happens when we die? A lot of those questions, and I was getting anxious about it because I didn't know and I wanted to know. But ultimately, we cannot know, right? So it's okay to be curious about those things, but if not understanding is making things worse, this is where perhaps like for me, is ignorance is bliss. Is just like, yeah, I don't know, but I'm here right now. I can worry about not knowing what happens when we die, but I'm here now. Should I be worrying about that? Why suffer about death when I'm not even at that? Maybe that's a question to ask when I'm on death's table at some point. But ultimately, I need to be more grateful about the life that I'm living now. And I've been missing that, and for those of you, you might feel similar because you get into that Groundhog's Day of just like the grind of the everyday and missing out on those elements of life and family and nature. And like, I'm looking at this beautiful snow right now that blanketed Colorado and is melting and providing water and all this stuff to our environment and to our life, and just losing sight of really like, I don't know why we're here, right? I don't know what maybe my purpose is, but ultimately it's for us to have relationships and interact with people and create positive experiences for others, rather than me only worrying about like, what do I need and what do I need? It needs to turn outwards and be more about how can I create value, how can I help more people. And ultimately, as a helper, I think that's maybe why I have so much friction too, is like, I am a helper by nature. On these snowy days, someone's on the side of the road, I'm going to pull over and help. But there came a time when there was, me as a father needing to provide. I started losing sight of that and thinking more about, well, how can I get paid for certain things or do certain things, even though I am helping? And I'm still wrestling through this through me. This is part of the business development where people talk about, well, if you're creating value for someone, that's worth something. We're not getting into business talk here, but this is just some of the friction that I have, right? But ultimately, it was a really good experience where I was thinking about these different elements and things which I didn't think were really at the top of my head, but I guess maybe subconsciously they were. It was a great journey. It was a good journey. It was heavy. I don't know if I do the hero dose at 5 grams again. I think our normal routine was kind of better. But ultimately, I don't foresee like a structured journey for a while because I'm in a place of action and change. Old self dies. I'm working with Michelle and my family and our team of like what's better clarity for our priorities, because I can't do everything, so that we can be more efficient to work hard and prioritize so that we can rest hard and enjoy and also enjoy in the work. Like, I do love what I do. Why am I making this such a struggle of being like it has to be this thing? We do want growth mindset. We do want financial growth mindset. We do want, from a business structure growth mindset to help us, reduce some of that. but you got to enjoy the ride a little bit more. That's me talking to me, maybe you too. And just knowing that, like, I don't know what happens when we die. I don't. Could be reincarnation. It could be what is heaven, what is hell. There's a lot of questions, and different religions and different things talk about that. And I think it's good to continue to stay curious and ask those who maybe know more. But ultimately, that knowledge is, I think, beyond humans in general. Of what we're capable of, but that's okay. I don't know if I want to know, to be honest. There was a part of me was just like, that was a lot. That was heavy, and that's okay. My mind could change based on another experience. You hear about these people who have had near-death experiences or have died and come back to life, and they've shared their experience of people they've seen, things they've heard. And that's amazing. That's amazing. I don't know if I want that knowledge based on having an experience like that, but ultimately where I am right now, right where I'm supposed to be, based on the decisions I've made in the past, my preconceived biases and habits from the past. And if I want that different future, having this marked death of Groundhog's Day, 2024, old self dying, new me, I got to make changes. How I think, how I act, how I prioritize, how I focus, which is good. And I feel very excited about that, about moving forward, and hopefully sharing more of that with you. Honestly, most of my sharing is been a little bit hesitant on obviously time, but just honestly the perception of this, which I'm working on getting over. It's just like, it's my experience. Who the hell cares? Why would I care what other people think about that? Because it's what's important to me and how I apply this in moving forward. And I hope this can be helpful to you, because I would encourage you to think about these things, and maybe how it's playing out in your life. But ultimately, too, is just like, it doesn't have to be psychedelic therapy. That's one element. That's one way of doing this. Regular, I don't say regular like it's bad, but talk therapy just in general. Groups, community. I know for me, and I'm going to share this, is one thing that's been a struggle for my life based on everything going on is relationships with other like-minded individuals. We do have families that we love and that we're close to, but me in particular is getting together with more men, more guys who share my values and maybe my mission of what I'm trying to become, and also those struggles, so that we can help each other out. That's something I know I've been missing for a while, and that I need to prioritize. But this is also a season of life, of kids and all these things. Not an excuse. It's just a lot of moving parts, and that's how it is for a lot of people during these phases, or if you have other things going on. So if that is you, I feel you, I see you, and I hope this can provide a little support. Who knows? It's you really get out of it what you kind of put into it. And when I see other people talk about these things, sometimes it comes off like, yeah, it makes sense, but it's really until you experience things. There's so many things out there. Well, just take this course because you'll reduce all the mistakes that I made. Action and doing and mistakes is ultimately how we learn, and not being afraid to make mistakes. That's me. That's a good wrap up. Not being afraid to make mistakes. There's so many things I have not done because I'm afraid to make mistakes. I feel like there's more to lose now as a parent and a husband, where my risk mitigation for doing things, I'm just afraid to make mistakes. But ultimately, I'm not growing because of that. And I got to start taking some more swings, taking more action, and doing more ultimately, and paying attention to what happens afterwards. So if anything, maybe we'll just wrap it with that, is not being afraid to make mistakes, which means action. I know oftentimes that gets pushed off as this, like, it's more of the male or whatever that is like go, do, and rest. action comes with rest. I'm not saying it's you don't rest. That's what I wasn't doing, but it's the prioritization of your actions and knowing that mistakes will happen, and then what happens afterwards, and what's your reaction to those mistakes. So if you're prepared for mistakes to be made, don't be surprised when they happen. Ultimately, we can't be surprised when mistakes happen, because they will happen, especially if you set yourself up for realizing there's going to be mistakes. And just being observant to why that happened. I think in the past I was just more frustrated, just like, why did that happen? And I didn't actually pay attention. Like, what decisions did I make that led me there? Sometimes stuff happens, right? There's the saying, happens, and we don't have control over that. And that's also another element of understanding, is just like, I can mitigate risk in mistakes based on my previous knowledge of how I set things up, but it's going to happen. Things are going to happen, stuff's going to happen, events happen, changes happen. And there's also, just an element of staying open to the unknown of whatever that is. And that's where there was a big struggle for me before, is just like the uncertainty. I was always trying to control, like, they say you have the power to control your life. You do, and decisions you make, but ultimately I only have control over my decisions and my actions. I don't have control over the decisions of my kids. I don't have the decision of the decisions of other people around. And so I can't beat myself up over those things that happen of which I had no control over. So thanks for tuning in. I'm still just figuring out where this goes and how it goes. Ultimately, this can be helpful for both men and women. Obviously, as a dad, if you're a dad listening to this, or a male thinking to be a dad or of that age, I hope this resonates well with you, because obviously I shared a lot about how being a father and a male, and that the weight that I felt because of that, and ultimately, like, what you do with that, right? Because we have responsibility. We have even if you're not a parent, you still have responsibilities, and that can come with some weight. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Take action, whatever that is. I hope we all live loud.